52. I do believe this is an open seat, a newly drawn district here. On stage we have, gentlemen, if you would raise your hands as I call your name, Hayden Collins, David Doss, and forgive me if I pronounced his name wrong, Chuck Huffsteller. Good, thank you. Gentlemen, I don't think you all were here when we laid out the rules for the format for the debate, but here are the rules for tonight's debate. Each candidate will receive 2 minutes to make opening remarks, and then we will proceed with a round of questions. And each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to the question. If a candidate feels he needs to respond or respond to something that was said, you will get 30 seconds to rebuttal. The timer is right in front of you, and he will let you know when you're running up on the clock. And at the end of the questions, each candidate will get 1 minute to make closing remarks. Any questions? Okay, here we go. First question tonight. Okay, I guess. Oh, thank you, sir. You're right. I was startled by this first question here. It's going to be a doozy for someone up here. I don't know which one, but it's going to be a doozy. Let's hear with the opening comments, starting with Mr. Huffsteller on this end, and we'll rotate the questions being directed to each one.
I want to thank everyone in Bartow for their support over the last few months, and I've really enjoyed getting to meet everyone in door-to-door meetings, the many activities I've been able to attend. I especially appreciate Barry Loudermilk's endorsement in this crucial Senate race. There's one issue I do need to address, though. One of my opponents in this race, David Doss, has sent out a very personal attack ad attacking my voting record, my standing as a Republican. David Doss lecturing me on being a Republican is like John Edwards lecturing marital advice to James Dobson. The truth is that when there has been no Republican opposition, we've tried to support the party by placing a meaningful vote to select the weakest candidate for the opposition. Never was that done during a presidential primary. The real issue here is David Doss's more recent support of Roy Barnes in 2010 with a fundraiser, a $1,000 check, and a Roy Barnes sign in his yard. He's also attacked me on ethics, and in fact, I signed it quickly. He said I was reluctantly brought in. It was signed the same day Casey Cagle signed it. The more important issue is that I've lived it during my 8 years of public service, while the record shows David Doss exceeding the cap every year with events, retreats, and concerts funded by lobbyists. His activities brought a sharp rebuke from the Atlanta Journal and Constitution several times. If you look at our campaign contributions, 90% of mine have been from within the district, while 77% of his have come from outside the district, mostly from trial lawyers who has contributed tens of thousands of dollars to Obama for America. He was a Democrat on the commission and raised taxes in the general fund 3 times. I was a Republican and cut taxes 6 times. After 3 years, the rainy day fund was depleted. After 3 years, I had it at $21 million. We eliminated all the debt. His last 2 months in office, he had to borrow money just to make payroll. I want to get the issues out there, and I want to get our records out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Doss.
Well, I'm going to use my time to introduce myself to you good folks in Bartow County. My name is David Doss. I want to be your next state senator. I believe this race needs to be about the citizens we serve and putting the public interest above those of the special interest. I've run a campaign based on the facts, the verifiable facts. I've run a campaign on issues. I've talked about ethics reform from day one. First speech I gave in January the 4th of this year, I made a promise, if you elect me your next state senator, that I will introduce on the first day the Georgia Alliance for Ethics Reform bill, and whether it passes or not, I promise to live by that until it becomes law for all. I'm the only candidate in the state to do that, and I was pleased today to receive the support of Herman Cain based on my record in support of ethics reform in this state. I've talked about the need to reform the tax code in this state. We have an antiquated tax code that's been around since 1939. I've talked about the need to stop undermining public education in this state. We've cut $4 billion out of public education in the last 10 years. I've talked about truth in taxation. I've talked about how legislators have taken money for Joshua's Law, and which is near and dear to the folks in Bartow County, collected money under that pretense and put it in the general fund and spent it on pet projects for legislators. I've been in county government. Despite what you might hear, we had the lowest tax rate in the last 30 years. I've been chairman of the State Transportation Board. I've served this district for 9 years, and I want to be your next state senator.
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
Good evening, I'm Hayden Collins. There we go, that's better, thank you. Good evening, I'm Hayden Collins. Find me at haydencollins.org. The ineffective legislature from the last session, 2012, had a lot to do with trench warfare. I'm a veteran, but I didn't involve myself in trench warfare. There's a trench warfare going on right now for the leadership of the Senate. And as the leadership of the Senate plays off between the lieutenant governor and the cast of characters on the floor, you'll find that this is quickly followed in this race as well. Those that would endorse one candidate or the other are putting their individuals in positions where they'll man the trenches when they get down to the Senate. The secret to a long life is learning how not to shorten it. I'm not interested in going into trench warfare. I'm interested in representing 52. Now, there's experience in battle zones, and I recognize that there are issues. I've worked from battle zones overseas to conference tables inside the United States, Fortune 100 companies, all the way down to small business. I'm a veteran. We ran a foster home here for 15 years and adopted several children, but we had 8 of them serving overseas at one time. My wife and I are community members that drive and push to set an example. Our goal is to set an example of light to where everyone can see it, and we'll know we're successful, that when we're done, the light is still shining. And I think that every example we've set with every child we put forward out there and what we've done running for the seat and how we're setting an example of what a senator can do when he doesn't have to jump into a trench can be followed really well. Now, take your time, visit haydencollins.org, see the videos, learn about my past, and learn about what I can do for you, and follow the 3 E's: economics, energy, and education.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Now we will begin with a line of questions here for each candidate. And as I stated before, I will rotate the order in which the candidates will speak. But the first question is going to go in this order. Mr. Huffsteller, you get to respond first. Why have you decided to become a Republican?
Well, I didn't decide to become a Republican. I've always been a Republican. I was part of the first Republican County Commission in Floyd County, was a Reagan supporter, who I think is the greatest president we've had, was a Goldwater supporter. I've always supported Republican ideals and will continue to fight for the conservative causes of this party. And I don't know too much else to say. I'm definitely a Republican. I've always been one. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Doss?
Well, like most folks that are my age, over 40 years old, a lot of folks at that age, at one time or another, were a Democrat. Just like Sonny Perdue, just like Nathan Deal, probably a third or half of the legislature, at one point were a Democrat. In 2005, I called a press conference at the Capitol, flanked by some of the top Republicans in the state, and I made a decision to switch parties. And just like Zell Miller said, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me. I have always been a lifelong conservative. I've been pro-life. I have a history of fiscal conservancy. And that's what brought me to the Republican Party. The difference in myself and my opponent, who claims to be the real Republican, is that since 2005, I have never voted anything but Republican. I have never pulled a Democratic ballot, unlike my opponent, who pulled a Democratic ballot as an elected Republican official in 2000. And in 2008, when Barack Obama was running for president, he voted Democrat. So that's what brought me to the party, conservative values.
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
What's a Democrat? I have not experienced that side of the fence. I'm part of a generation that apparently has not experienced that long life, of course. I'm a Tea Party member. I run a Tea Party radio show on Saturdays. And not only that, I think if I manage to look at my record, or one of these guys would pay their consultants to look up my record, I think you'll find that I voted Republican in every opportunity I had, but during deployments, they don't register your absentee ballot as a vote. So I'm not sure how they would do that. So it makes it look like I wasn't present for that election, but I was. It's an absentee ballot. My parents were Democrats. And I'm sure they're spinning over in their graves every time that I come up and run as a Republican, and every time I come up and run and try to do the great job that I'm trying to do and set the example that I'm trying to set.
Thank you, sir. Continuing with you, the second question is, and this gets back to, and I think one of the candidates mentioned it earlier, education. What are your thoughts on school choice and having the tax dollars follow the child to the education choice of the parent? Beginning with Mr. Collins.
The wonderful thing that I get to do sometimes consulting is I go from state to state, like the state of Colorado, and evaluate public school systems. I also evaluated the Prince George school system in Washington, D.C. Wonderful school system built in, I think some of the contractors may owe Jesus money still. Old buildings, old facilities. But the thing I learned there that President Obama killed was school choice worked. School choice worked really well. The voucher system worked really well in Prince George School District. It worked so well that they had schools that the kids came from, that their scores came up as well. Now, I have a position on my website as well. I introduced the Vision Bridge School program, and I learned that program from working in the state of Colorado for their Bridge program and the Vision School program in the state of Texas, where I worked with both educational programs. You bring good ideas from elsewhere. You bring good ideas from across the United States, and you bring them here to make them work. The Vision Bridge School, you can find on the website at haydencollins.org, brings private business into the school system to help with the IEP kids and the SST kids. Helps with classroom size, doesn't require any additional tax funds. The private industry groups, such as Sylvan, Huntington, Ombudsman, agree to take the daily rate like they have in other states. And we bring private business into the education system to help with our kids. Now this gets really beneficial, and there's 15 seconds, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Doss.
Well, I certainly favor more school choice, and I certainly favor the tax dollar following the student. I think that was the second half of your question.
Yes, sir.
And I'm certainly glad to see, for example, the success that was championed by Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle on the Career Academy that started and I believe in 2007, and there's already 27 or 28 around the state. It has been an enormous success. Another option for parents and students. It allows them to literally graduate from high school on one day and graduate from college on the next day. That is one of the single best things we can do as a ready and able workforce to attract new jobs to this state. And I also am excited about the potential that charter schools bring. But here's the caveat that where I may be different. I think I certainly support charter schools as long as they are approved by the local school board and they are run by the local school board. I have real problems with this idea to create a board in Atlanta of non-elected officials that can override a local school board decision. And a lot of this conversation is being driven by out-of-state for-profit companies that want to come in and run school systems. Charter schools are a great thing as long as you can retain local control and local operation.
Thank you. Mr. Huston.
I'm a big proponent of school choice. I've seen it in my own children. I've got my daughter out here that'll be starting her doctorate at Georgia State. She's been homeschooled. She's been in St. Mary's, a school there in Rome, and private schools. I've got a son that's done several different schools. We look for the best opportunity for our children, and we need those choices there. I've got a daughter in the 8th grade at the Rome Public School System right now, which is doing a great job. We've got to protect all those choices. We've got to protect our public schools and their funding, but we also have to allow choices for other schools. There's innovative things out there. My daughter at Rome spent several years in the Georgia Cyber Academy, an online school that did wonders for her. It let her get into the gifted program when she started at Rome Metal and did a super job. We need those choices there. We need the competition. We need to protect our schools. I do have to say, though, I'm hearing a different answer from David Doss than the NEA answers. The liberal Obama group that endorsed him and Obama and Roy Barnes. I've been endorsed by John Barge, the state school superintendent, and my answers have been consistent.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Doss, you want to respond? 30 seconds, sir.
I don't know how everybody that doesn't endorse Chuck is somehow a liberal Obama lover. The GAE is 42,000 educators across this state. The endorsement that I got from them, the exclusive endorsement, was made on the local level, and I promise you, every one of them is not a liberal Obama lover, Chuck.
You get to respond, sir. 30 seconds.
I do just want to point out that they always endorse the Democrat in national elections and the governor, and they have a history of that. There's good teachers out there, there's good teacher organizations. They are a liberal organization.
Thank you. Are we going to move on to the next question? Here is someone mentioned in their response in office, Constitution office in the state of Georgia, in the name of the Lieutenant Governor's office. And the question is, the Georgia Constitution states that the Lieutenant Governor is to provide over the state Senate, similar to the Vice President over the U.S. Senate. If elected, how will you vote in giving powers or not giving powers to the Lieutenant Governor, and why would you vote that way? How will you vote and why? We're going to begin with Mr. Huffstiller.
The Constitution of the state of Georgia uses the word distinction. It says there needs to be a distinction between the executive, the judicial, and the legislative branch. We need to keep those distinctions in place. We've got some issues down there at the state, some conflicts that need to be resolved, but we need to follow the Constitution, and the legislature needs to be run by the elected legislatures.
Thank you, sir. And starting with Mr. Collins on the other end.
I'll open up by saying I'm not telling. There's two candidates up here. They're obviously in the trenches either way, and I think it's a good poker hand to have in my hand to go down there and let them negotiate with me so I can see what I can do for District 52. And I think that negotiation plays out like Texas Hold'em on a poker table. And I've got a great poker face. So you know what? I'm not telling.
That's your prerogative, sir. Thank you.
Well, I don't mind telling you where I stand. The state constitution says that the lieutenant governor is the presiding officer of the Senate. Unfortunately, a couple of years ago, some senators decided to convince the caucus to strip the lieutenant governor of the powers and try to run the state Senate by committee. One of those guys, the pro tem, Tommy Williams from Lyons, Georgia, population of probably 2,500 people, and a contributor to Chuck Huffstiller, they have shanghaied the authority of the state Senate. One only has to look at the last 2 years to see how dysfunctional the state Senate has become. The governor, Nathan Deal, and the speaker, David Ralston, tried to work out a compromise this year. They thought they had a deal, and they went back to the Senate caucus, this committee that tries to run the Senate by committee, and it failed miserably. So as a result, the Senate has basically neutered himself. I would argue, if you want to be the lieutenant governor of the state of Georgia, put your money down and run. State senators that are elected probably by 6,000 or 8,000 votes don't need to usurp the vote of 8 million Georgians that elect this lieutenant governor. I'm proud to have the endorsement of Casey Cagle, and I'll vote to restore his powers.
Thanks, sir. Oh, you want to comment on that? Good. Okay. And this next question is a little ironic in the sense that we know the presumptive Republican presidential nominee stood before a very, in my opinion, very hostile audience yesterday, the NAACP, to address them. And I'm saying this for the audience education here. In order for those individuals to get into that conference, here's the hypocritical part about this. They had to show a voter ID to vote, to be a member, to elect their members, leadership in the NAACP. Okay? They have to prove with an ID, photo ID, to vote for their elected leaders. Do you support voter ID? And I'm a product of the first voter ID law here in Georgia. I got elected with that, and I can honestly say we didn't have any problems in Gwinnett County when it came to providing the identification necessary to prove that you were legally authorized to vote in an election. Do you support the voter ID law? Yes, beginning with you, I'm sorry.
I absolutely do. I don't think there's anything wrong with when you step up to the ballot box that we make sure we know who you are and that you are legally qualified to cast that vote. We've had some of that in one of the counties we represent, some very notorious voter fraud. So I certainly support the voter ID law and would look to strengthen it.
Thank you. Mr. Huffsteller, coming this in, we'll follow Mr.
All right. I've always supported the voter ID law, just asking somebody to prove who they are. People have called it intimidation. It's not that, and it clearly needs to be part of it. You know, David on the Tea Party Talk said other than right to life, he and Roy Barnes agreed on pretty much everything. I remember when Roy Barnes sued the state of Georgia over the voter ID law, and he lost it. Again, I think you need to look at association.
Thank you. Mr. Collins. Are you getting a little warm there, sir?
No, I'm making sure I don't get any mud thrown on me.
Okay. We hope it doesn't come to that.
One of my tours overseas, I got to experience a very wonderful thing. I got to see an election take place. And the election took place, the individuals got ink all over their fingers. That was their ID. They couldn't come back and vote twice, and this ink could not be removed. Trust me, it took days to get it off. And when they got done voting, they celebrated. They went outside with their AK-47s and shot everything in the air. Of course, we were on alert for days because we didn't know what they were doing, but we figured out they were celebrating. If a third world country could come out with a voter ID that is soundproof like that, like using ink, why can't we follow the same process and do something here along the same lines? Yes, definitely support it.
Thank you, sir. For the audience benefit here, these questions were presented to the organization early on last week before last, couple of weeks ago. So these are questions that were generated from citizens here in Bartow County. Just wanted to share that with you. This is a simple yes or no question, and may generate a lot of comments. Do you support passage of the T-SPLOS tax? I'm going to open this one. Whoever wants to go first on this one.
I like sales taxes, and I think they've been used to a lot of advantages. I don't support this particular one. It creates a huge bureaucracy in the state of Georgia to manage it. I think it's unconstitutional with the penalties that were put in, and that's the biggest problem I have with it. You know, I hate somebody that says, vote for this or else, and threatens you, and that's what's happened in this. You have a 10% match if you pass it. You have a 30% match if you don't pass it of state funds. I don't agree with that approach, using a stick and threatening somebody to get them to vote for something. I don't think that that's going to pass constitutional muster, and I've had some excellent people in that area that don't think it will. I don't think it's going to pass anyway, and I certainly don't want to depend on the courts to make the decision after we've seen the Obamacare ruling of recently. We cannot depend on the courts for that decision. We have opportunities to get funding in other ways. We have just had a transportation bill passed by the U.S. Senate and House that will provide funds. I don't know that I agree with that one, but we'll certainly use that $2 billion to our benefit, and then we'll go back and we'll restructure a sales tax law that cuts property taxes, or more likely income taxes, and rewards people not threatens them.
Thank you. Mr. Doss?
I think the question was, do we support the T-Splost? I am not out working to support the T-Splost. I'm not out working to work against the T-Splost. I've said all along, I think it's bad public policy. I wish that the legislature had had the wisdom to withdraw it and fix what's wrong with it and put it out. I could agree, this may be the only thing, but I agree with Chuck that I think the T-Splost has some constitutional questions that will be challenged should it be passed, but I'm not out working for it or working against it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Collins?
I'm on record with T-Splost, and it's a nice video. Visit my website. You'll see it on the right-hand side, but I'm definitely not for it. I'm a Tea Party member. I'm not really excited about any taxes that are coming down because there's this one thing called supply and demand. And the baby boomer generation outnumbers the next 3 generations out there. And there's no way my generation or the next 2 generations are going to be able to make up the tax base as 10,000 of these individuals retire each day and 10,000 of these individuals die each day. So yeah, there's going to have some serious tax structures that are going to come up, and I think it's going to be based on a fair tax. I really do like that idea. But I don't like the idea of the next 3 generations being put into indentured servitude to cover the tax base as the baby boomers eat, drink, and be merry, and when they leave the table and the scraps that are left for my generation and the younger ones will be paying for a long time to come. Too many times I see the leadership making these constant decisions for entitlements and passing things out, and as they pass them out, they borrow money against the debt, national debt, and when they leave, we're going to be the ones that are going to be paying for it. So I'm not seriously interested in that. My Tea Party radio show is on Saturday at noon. And of course, check any of those videos you'd like and hold me accountable for any one of them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This next question is posed to 2 of you, and I don't know who those 2 are, whoever the 2 businessmen are here. And that question is, there are 2 businessmen? Okay. 3? Well, okay. Well, all 3 of you then. There has been a lot of talk in this race about tax incentives for certain businesses. Some have said that this is the government picking winners and losers. Since all 3 of you have businesses, have each of you ever applied for or asked for or received any special incentives, tax breaks, or any business credit from city, county, or state government?
Hey, I'll kick this one off. My business is short-lived. I ended up selling it out. I'm actually working for Sane Engineering right now at the United States Marine Corps Base in Albany, Georgia. The economy hit me pretty hard as well. But no, I have not applied for anything. Now, saying that, as a veteran, when I do apply for contracts, they do have those out there where veterans get preferences on contracts. Now, I get to take advantage of that, but I do not get advantage over any disabled veteran. One of my sons is 70% disabled right now. The other one's 50% disabled. They're out applying for contracts right now, and I'm sure they're using every one of their veterans' benefits as well. But I don't look at that as a perk for a business industry. That's earned.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Doss.
Tax incentives are something we talked about earlier tonight in Calhoun, and I said there that it is important that we have a fair and aggressive tax incentive program to recruit new industry to this state. But we need a verifiable way to account for, did those tax incentives actually create the jobs and the investment that they were supposed to? Right now, the state has no system to do that. I have railed about the antiquated tax code that has special interest tax breaks bought and paid for by the lobbyists that will fight me on ethics reform. And these are special tax exemptions, dozens in the tax code that apply to specific companies or specific industries. I think if they don't apply to all of us in this room, then we need to take a long, hard look. Answer the question, have I ever applied, received, or gotten a tax break from the state or city or county? No.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Husto.
Well, first of all, I have not applied or received one. I guess I find a little problem with the answer we just had. Mr. Doss has applied in writing for a TAD help in a hotel. He's been working on building a hotel over there for several years. of $1.2 million of property tax money from other property tax owners in the district to make those payments, as well as free water and sewer hookups, state tax credits for the hotel, 1,500 employee. This has been applied for, and I know he said tonight earlier in Calhoun he was for certain tax incentives. In our first meeting in Rome, he said he was not for any of them. We need to get that $200 million back. So he definitely has a proposal with the city where he asked for in writing a lot of tax breaks. The other issues, I think there's a conflict there. We had $700,000 of DOT money that went to enhance property right across from it, sidewalks, water fountains, that kind of stuff that we need to put on the roads over here in Bartow County. I have never participated in any conflicts like that and never asked for any tax incentives.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dawes, you want to respond? 30 seconds.
You know, about the only way you can tell if Chuck's telling lies if his lips are moving. So let me tell you about this. I have never applied for any tax credit. Chuck produced the application. It does not exist. I am working to put together a hotel deal in Rome, Georgia. I am not the owner-operator. I am simply the guy putting the deal together. Any tax credits are available to everyone that builds in this development, and it won't be me. It'll be the owner-operator of the hotel. I have never received one, never applied for one, never gotten one. Produce it, Chuck.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, it is in the minutes of the Rome City Commission that it's requested, number one. Number two, I think this is a big conflict. If you're going to be a state senator and have power over allocations to a city government or a county government, and yet you're competing for tax incentives and with other individuals, I think this is a conflict that needs to be avoided.
Thank you, sir. You get 15 seconds to respond, and then we're going to move to the next question.
Chuck, provide the application. There has never applied for one. Put up or shut up.
Thank you, gentlemen. Let's move into the next question. And for the benefit of the audience, Mr. Huffstetter mentioned the acronym TAD, which is a tax allocation district, for those that didn't know. The question is, and we're going to start with Mr. Collins, do you believe in the privatization of non-constitutional services and general return of government to its limited role as defined by our founding fathers?
I'm really glad I got to go first again. Thank you for that.
You went first the last time?
Yes, indeed. And that's quite all right. I was feeling a little ignored from the ping pong match. You know, first of all, on public record again, go to the website and take a look at it. Limited government is key. With all the foreign nations that I've been to and all the foreign duties that I've done overseas, I see what happens. I've seen what happened with the socialist countries and what's going on in Greece. Greece is not a very happy camper with what they're doing right now. Thank God they had a vote and the conservatives took over. Yes, doing a lot to limit our government needs to be done because the Obama policies of expanding government, hoping that businesses was going to catch up, has done nothing but create a $17 trillion debt that we're going to end up responsible for. That whole layout, that whole scenario, the philosophy has to change. Business leads, not government. Small business, the backbone of the economy, has got to be able to expand in such a nature to support that and support a growing economy, not government. Government doesn't produce anything. As far as going back to the founding fathers, as much of that as we can get back this next election, oh heck yeah. As much of it as we can. Repeals, anything that we can get out there and do, but it's got to be strong, it's got to be unified, and it's got to be put together in such a nature to where everybody in the nation can get behind the program and not force it down somebody's throat, but actually put it together and sell it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dawes,
Tell me that question. I got.
do you believe in privatization of non-constitutional services and a general return of government to its limited role as defined by our founding fathers?
Got it. Great. Yes, sir. And certainly I do. And not only do I believe in it, I've lived it. At Georgia DOT, there the 9 years I was there, we greatly increased the number of functions that Georgia DOT does and outsourced them to the private sector. Things like mowing, things like traffic control. There's a lot of jobs that we put in the private sector. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the largest time than any other time in the state DOT's history. I also became a nationally recognized expert in public-private, where we bring private sector money into highway construction and transfer the risk from the taxpayers to the private sector. So I certainly believe in the free market system. I certainly believe in outsourcing as much as we can without jeopardizing the services that we're constitutionally required to deliver.
Thank you. Mr. Hufsteller.
I certainly support privatization of functions that are in areas such as we obviously need to keep the police as a public unit, not privatize that out. There's certain things that you don't want to do, but there are things that you do want to do. There's efficiencies to be gained, and we need to. And I know DOT was brought up, and I think that's an area where there can be some huge efficiencies. We had an issue in 2008 where auditors came in and found $360 million in contracts that had not even been entered into the system. As a result, with some other shortfalls, $450 million of the 2009 budget had to pay for 2008 cost overruns, entries that weren't there, things like that, resulting in an F rating for the department for several years. There's a lot of efficiency that can be gained in government through good management and through privatization of services.
Thank you. Mr. Dawes, 30 seconds, and we're going to wrap it up because time has been called on me, and I have one final question for the panel.
Again, Chuck knows very few facts. In the hometown headlines the other day, he made the statement in writing that the Georgia DOT spends $200 million to pay for cost overruns and poor planning. I sent that to the Georgia DOT and asked for a response. The Deputy Commissioner Todd Long, day before yesterday, sent the following response. We do not, bold letters, we do not use $200 million to pay for cost overruns and poor planning. I have no idea what Mr. Hufstetter is talking about.
One last response, and we're going to wrap it up.
Okay, these overruns caused a lot of debt, and that is the debt that's being paid off right now with these funds.
Thank you, sir. I had another question here for Chuck, but I think you answered that in response to a statement that Mr. Doss made, so I'm going to move that one to the side there. One last question here, and this is another hot topic across this nation. I know the state of Alabama, the state of Arizona, and I do believe Georgia, they all passed some very tough immigration laws. And I think the U.S. Supreme Court ruling in Arizona has affected a law here. Do you support immigration reform and the E-Verify law? And I had a meeting with the U.S. Justice Department and my agency coming down in the governor's office talking about the latest version of the immigration bill that we passed here. And beginning with, no, Mr. Collins, beginning with Mr. Hufstetter.
Well, immigration is an important area. The issue has been caused by several problems in the past, not verifying employees and not allowing in documented workers in cases that they should have been there. And that's important going forward. We've got to have a system in place, not where a government just doesn't follow laws, but where the laws are followed, and that we verify who the workers are, and we do allow in workers documented to help our economy. We don't allow in, like they've happened, a flood of illegal workers with criminal backgrounds into the system.
Thank you. Mr. Doss?
Well, I certainly support immigration reform. I've said many times in this race that I'd like to be a state senator that thinks and not reacts. I think what we saw in the General Assembly was a reacting rather than a thinking about immigration reform. It cost, according to Georgia's agricultural secretary, our farmers hundreds of millions of dollars in lost crops. Now, we all are for immigration reform. We all want to make sure that folks are here properly and legally, but we don't want to take a political opportunity and in the process harm the number one industry in the state, which is agriculture. So I certainly support immigration reform. We want to make sure the right folks are here for the right reasons, and we want to do it in a reasonable and logical and sensible way and not have unintended consequences ripple throughout our state economy.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Collins, it's your turn.
Thank you. Greatly appreciate that. My brother's wife is from Lima, Peru. She got her citizenship about 2.5 years ago. One of my sister's husbands is from Australia, Sydney, and it took him 9.5 months to get his citizenship inside the United States. They took the test, they did the process, nobody handed them amnesty, they earned it, and they probably know more than most people do about anything in the United States because of the test they took. But one of the things we learned when they went through that process is there are some pitfalls. Like INS will come after you if you don't have your card checked in every 2 months and things like this. There are issues, there are problems. But they didn't cross the border illegally. They used the system correctly. I hate the fact that we have terms called illegal aliens and somebody calls them undocumented. It's all the same. The laws that are in place, if they're enforced, would be a heck of a lot better. There's laws in Arizona that went to the Supreme Court that they're questionable on. I kind of agree with the Supreme Court decision they did on that because it assumes that the federal government actually does have responsibilities that they're failing on. And the states have responsibilities that they can do and the federal government can't do anything about it. So yeah, E-Verify can be used well. The documented immigrants working would be fantastic. The only reason that Janet got a job, that's my brother's wife, is because she was documented. She's working in the Anaheim hospital. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, these are your candidates for Senate District here in the Bartow County area. So let's give them a round of applause for their responses tonight. And we will allow them 1 minute to make their closing remarks, and we're going to start in the middle with Mr. Doss.
Well, I want to thank you very much for being here today. I appreciate your interest in government and exercise your right to come out and see what the candidates have to offer. I think tonight was a pretty clear demonstration about what David Doss is about. I came here to talk about issues, and I came here to talk about common sense conservative solutions. I didn't come here to attack my opponent and come up with a bunch of undocumented facts and accusations and mudslinging. You deserve better than that. Bartow County deserves better than that. And the 52nd District deserves better than that. I'm proud to have the endorsement of Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the Georgia Right to Life, the Georgia Association of Educators, an A rating from the NRA, and as of today, the support of Herman Cain. And I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Collins.
I opened my statement at the beginning of this entire session talking about the trench warfare that's going on in the Senate. And during one of the questions, they would ask how I would vote, and I said, I'm not giving my answer because I think the negotiating power of not putting that on the table will get me much further at the Senate than laying it out on the floor right now so they'll know what trench I'm jumping into. My name's Hayden Collins. Visit my website at haydencollins.org and know that I've been in your community, serving your children, helping your children, working with education in several states, serving overseas, and putting myself in harm's way for the very Constitution that we serve. Honey, thank you. Good night.
Close us out, Mr. Hofstadter.
Again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here and understand a very negative piece went out on me. I'm sure there'll be more coming out on me with half-truths that talk about Obama running when he's not even on that ballot, and other half-truths about ethics reform. These need to be responded to, and that's what I try to do. I want to remind everyone I took over as the first Republican commissioner in Floyd County and inherited the highest tax rate in the history of Floyd County. We were able to reduce property taxes 6 times, decrease taxes to the city of Rome by 27.5%. I had the lowest ending millage rate, not starting, not average, but ending millage rate of any candidate up here. We paid off all the debts of the previous commission and eliminated the debt service line item from the budget. We eliminated all TAN borrowing. I'm proud to have the endorsement of John Barge, the state school superintendent, Barry Loudermilk, our constitutional state senator from here, Layla Shipman, the National Young Republican Woman of the Year, Bob Barr, and he ran me out of time, so I can't keep going.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, your candidates for Senate District 52. For the audience members, if you did not hear your question asked, these gentlemen, I'm quite sure will be available after we adjourn.